In the early 80s, hip-hop was simple. A loop, a beat, maybe a scratch. On the outskirts of New York, a crew of DJs called the Bomb Squad, armed with a new weapon, the sampler, set out to push it to its limit. On Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions, they tore up the rulebook, cramming every second with noise, urgency, and samples. And in the process, changed the sound of hip-hop forever. This is the story of how it all came together. The story begins in Roosevelt, Long Island, a working-class suburb just east of New York City. By the mid-70s, disco, funk, and the earliest sparks of hip-hop were colliding in New York's parks and clubs. Roosevelt had its own scene, built around mobile DJ crews who could bring the party anywhere. School gyms, street corners, roller rinks. Two brothers, Hank and Keith Shocklee, were part of that world. They were known as Spectrum City, a mobile DJ unit named for the wide range of music they played.
Always interested in records. I have a collection of records that was amazing. I've been collecting records since I was like 4 years old. My father was a massive jazz collector. So he had every album from Thelonious Monk to Cannonball Adderley to Coltrane to Art Blakey. So I had a lot of records.
As Spectrum City's reputation grew, the Shockleys knew they needed a voice to lead the crew. And that came in the form of Colton Ridenour, or Chucky D, a graphic design student at Adelphi University who grabbed the mic at one of their parties.
If somebody played what is known as a hip-hop beat, all the MCs would line up and they want to grab the microphone. You would have like 20 or 30 guys wanting to get their turn so that they could show their skills. He sounded better than any of the 30 rappers that was there, and he had some wit and some intelligence to him. So I said, you know what? I needed an MC for my situation to take it to another level.
With Keith as the only DJ in the crew, they were still looking for a second pair of hands. That's when Norman Melody Rogers, later known as Terminator X, came on board.
They were the king of the Roosevelt DJs. They did a lot of college gigs, high school gigs. They would rent out halls and throw gigs. They were looking for a second DJ. They didn't really test me or nothing. They just took me in.
The crew built their following in Roosevelt and the neighboring towns, throwing some of the biggest parties in the area.
After it's been hot, sun is coming down, 6 o'clock, we go in, we set up in the park. No permit, no nothing. It was cool back then.
By the early 80s, their reach went beyond street parties. A chance meeting between Chuck and fellow Adelphi student Bill Stepney led to their first radio appearance on Adelphi College's WBAU 90.3 FM.
I'm just starting on our college radio station to play hip-hop. I'm 19. I see a guy in a silk DJ crew jacket emblazoned on the back Spectrum City. So I approach him and I say, hey man, I'm Bill Stepney. Would Spectrum City consent to coming up to my show? And that meeting in 1982 became the foundation for Public Enemy.
Their appearance on the show became so popular that they were offered their own slot, the Super Spectrum Mix Hour. It became a hub for local talent, introducing them to future allies like Dr. Dre and future Public Enemy member William Flavor Flav Drayton. Then in 1984, Spectrum City landed their first record deal.
We first got signed to an independent label called Vanguard Records, and a well-known DJ by the name of Pinky Velasquez produced the first record, almost like an electro record.
From the west, east, from the west, not here to impress, gonna put you to a test.
I wasn't happy with it because I thought that record represented something that was happening a while back that I thought was now starting to run its course. I wanted to do something a little bit more street heavy. With a little bit of time, I got a chance to produce the B-side of that record. Check out the radio.
On the radio wave so you can record.
From that point, it just got me to the understanding the production process.
They didn't know it yet, but they had just assembled the core of what would become Public Enemy. And behind the scenes, the production powerhouse known as the Bomb Squad. By 1985, Spectrum City had traded radio for the studio, figuring out how to bottle the chaos of their shows onto tape. They needed someone who could bridge the gap between raw ideas and finished records. That someone was Eric Vietnam Sadler, a multi-instrumentalist and engineer.
Eric Sadler, to me, was the musician. He could play bass, he could play guitar, he could play drums.
With Sadler in the fold, the group began working on more demos, and it was Chuck D that delivered the first real breakthrough, Public Enemy #1.
I put together this difficult sample from the JB Blow Your Head. Blow Your Head was a song that they played at the roller rinks, but the DJs were not quick enough to keep that loop going, that sound of the synthesizer. It was a really quick beat that even changed tempos. So the first time that this beat could ever get looped, the only way it could get looped was in a pause tape.
I'm all in, put it up on the board, another rapper shot down from the mouth and board.
Made in 1984 as a WBAU radio promo, Public Enemy #1 was already turning heads on Long Island, but the real turning point came when Run DMC visited the station and heard it on air.
I remember when we went up there, they was playing records and then they played Public Enemy #1. We ran to Rick Rubin, yo, you gotta hear this. We said, God has come down from heaven to rock the mic.
That track was all it took for Rubin to start calling.
That was the record on the tape that got around so infectiously that Rick Rubin called my house for 2 years to try to get me to do the records, and especially that record on the brand new label called Def Jam.
It was off the back of that demo that the newly named Public Enemy signed a full album deal with Def Jam, though not without some convincing.
We never wanted to sign to a major record company because I was already throwing events. I was already hiring artists to come play for my events. And I heard all the horror stories about their record companies. Bill Stepney became the promotion director for Def Jam Records. When he started working for them, he convinced me that Def Jam was legit.
Hank saw the debut as a wake-up call. The budget was just $5,000, so instead of hiring musicians, they built the record entirely from turntables, cassette loops, and early samplers like the Ensoniq Mirage, along with the Roland CR8000 drum machine.
I just said, why don't we just make records from records? And at that time, it was pretty revolutionary because you're walking into a studio and there's no synthesizers. There's only a turntable, a mixer, and a sampler. And even the engineers at the time was like, okay, well, what are we doing here?
They worked graveyard shifts at INS Recording in Manhattan, waiting for Mantronics or Teddy Riley to finish before getting in at 2 or 3 a.m., paying a fraction of the primetime rate.
We started out on using the Roland CR8000. That particular drum machine had a preset amounts of beats, and it also had an area where you can program your own beats, but you had to program it in step fashion. You couldn't hear what it was that you was programming. You just would press buttons and then hope to get something that was kind of remotely usable.
They also weren't afraid to experiment, like on the track Right Starter.
I had programmed the beat in there, but I didn't like the way it was. It just felt regular. So I brought in Johnny Juice and I gave Johnny Juice a kick drum on the turntable, and basically what he did was he would scratch in the kick drum part. There's no kick drum in this record. The kick drum is the DJ.
In the 80s, what you get is a preacher. Forgiveness, torture, the system that brought ya.
When Yo Bum Rush the Show dropped in 1987, it was rawer and more minimal than what would follow. But the DNA was already there. Sirens, Stabbed, layered samples, and a style that was equal parts street party and political rally. In 1987, most hip-hop records still followed the same formula. A stripped-down drum machine beat, a single loop, and an occasional DJ cut. But Public Enemy wanted to tear that template apart, to make tracks that felt as full and layered as a funk orchestra.
The goal was to do something that I didn't hear, which was layering and densing the music. If you listen to a lot of the records at the time, it was basically a beat and maybe a melody line and a scratch on top of it. I wanted something a little bit more denser than that. Something that reminiscents of a band like Earth, Wind & Fire, Kool and the Gang, all these bands that had like 11 pieces in there. And the idea was to replicate that scenario, but by using pieces of all these records.
Their vision for building a whole production unit was simple. Give themselves the power to create at a much higher level. The first record that really defined this new sound was Rebel Without a Pause.
Yes, the rhythm's a rebel. Without a pause, I'm lowering my level.
It actually began life as a B-side to You're Gonna Get Yours from their debut album.
Rebel Without a Pause to me is the most significant record because it created its sonic signature and it gave PE an identity.
And the spark came when Hank heard DJ Mr. Magic drop Eric B. and Rakim's I Know You Got Soul on radio.
I was listening to Mr. Magic. He said, we got this new track. It was by Eric B. and Rakim, and he played I Know You Got Soul. And the record was so hot to me that I was pissed. I was like, how can they do this? So we went in and made what we considered to be the inverse of I Know You Got Soul. I Know You Got Soul was rhythmically smooth, melodic. We wanted to make something that was aggressive, noisy, loud, and abrasive.
Recording during Public Enemy's 1987 Def Jam tour, Chuck wrote all the lyrics in a single day at home. Instead of looping James Brown's funky drummer, Flavor Flav played the beat straight through on a drum machine for over 5 minutes, giving it a live, relentless feel. Terminator X added the now famous Transformer scratch, a technique he'd first heard from Jazzy Jeff.
Jazzy transform. DJ Jazzy Jeff on the Transformer scratch.
The first time I heard the Transformer scratch, I was like, how did he do that? I played around for a while. They had a phono line switch on top of the fader, and that gave me the effect to do the Transformer scratch.
Dropped in August 1987, a full 10 months before the second album, Rebel Without a Pause set the tone for everything that followed. Its piercing siren, wall of sound layering, and relentless pace became the blueprint for Nation. That same month, they added a new weapon to their arsenal, the EMU SP1200 sampler. Compared to the setup on their debut, it was a huge leap forward, but still came with limitations that shaped their creativity.
Keep in mind, no time stretching like it is today. So we had to invent those things. Let's say we're on an SP1200 where you're only getting 2.5 seconds per pad. How do I get something that's 2 measures long into that? I have to speed it up. Sometimes we'll run it up to 78, then bring it in and then pitch it down. This is where you get that grungy kind of dark-ish, all the artifacts are stretching and things of that nature. And that to me gave the character, gave it soul.
Even with all the new gear, the production was always built to showcase Chuck's unique vocal.
He has what I consider to be almost like a gospel minister kind of a voice. So if you put lovely, pretty chords and pretty harmonies behind him, he would sound like an R&B record. In order for the message that he was getting across, I wanted to design something that was juxtaposed. His sound and music is doing some chaotic thing all around him, and thus creating an aggression that I wanted to get across.
Making these tracks was never a simple loop job. They'd stack sequence and constantly swap out parts until the songs felt alive.
You had to find the right piece for the right situation. It's pretty easy to take a 2-bar loop and loop it over. Let's say if you have to turn that loop into 8th notes, that 2 bars is an eternity, and you can't repeat yourself over and over. That's why the Bomb Squad was there. One of us could have produced the record by ourselves, but that wasn't the mission. The mission was we had to go through hundreds of records to come up with one song. Because when you're looking for that sample, you're not going to find that on the first record you pull up. It takes a lot of digging.
When It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back dropped in June 1988, it raised the bar, peaking at number 42 on the Billboard 200, a rare feat for a rap record at the time, going gold within months. For the Bomb Squad, it was proof in their dense, aggressive sampling style. Right, time for a quick little break before we dive into the final chapter. If you're into sampling like the Bomb Squad, we make our own sample packs, especially for producers making hip-hop, perfect to chop and layer. And you can check those out over on our website. Right now, everything's buy one, get one free using the code SECONDCOURSE at checkout. If you just want a taste, we've also got free packs you can grab, and the link for those is in the description. Anyway, let's get back to the important stuff. By the time Fear of a Black Planet dropped in April 1990, the Bomb Squad were in huge demand throughout the world of hip-hop. The defining moment of that era came when Spike Lee asked Public Enemy to create a theme for his upcoming film, Do the Right Thing.
I called them. I needed a song that was going to be like an anthem, and it had to be an angry song, and I think this film is going to be the anthem this summer.
One writing session was all it took for Chuck to craft Fight the Power, and the Bomb Squad production hit like organized chaos. Its placement in Spike Lee's film turned it into one of hip-hop's most iconic moments. That same year, their sound traveled coast to coast. Ice Cube, freshly split from NWA, was looking for producers to produce his debut.
I started telling Hank Shocklee, Keith Shocklee, Eric Vietnam Sadler, I need my record produced. Hank Shocklee was like, yo, we want to produce some of them tracks. So now I'm happy as a motherfucker because these dudes, the Bomb Squad, were mad scientists when it came to sampling. Let's mob.
I got it going on. A nigga that's living in the city of the criminal zone. One time can't keep the law.
Throughout the early 90s, the Bomb Squad name still carried weight. They produced for the likes of Bell Biv DeVoe, Big Daddy Kane, and Slick Rick. But their greatest legacy was in influence on future producers. From DJ Premier's intricate drum programming to LP's noisy industrial collages. Even today in experimental rap, EDM or film scoring, you can hear the Bomb Squad's DNA. The sound of a dozen ideas fighting for space but somehow coming together as one. And if you're a producer who loves to collaborate, share samples or just chat about music, we've just launched a Discord community and we'd love to see some of you in there. And the link for that is in the description.